Welcome back, everybody, to the next segment in our show. And as we mentioned before, we're going to talk, the doctor's going to talk about the soil microbiome. And that's going to be a really great segue into this roundtable discussion that was held in Washington, D.C. this past week. I think it's something that's really cool that the new administration's doing. It's really focusing on the future health of our country. And so, Doctor, could you talk a little bit about the soil microbiome, and then we can kind of transition from there?
Well, so a pinch of soil, a pinch of healthy soil can contain hundreds of healthy microbial species. Like I said, there's this whole, it's like a whole ecology happening that we don't even know about. We can't see it, and so we don't even know it's there, but it is having such an amazing impact on nutrition and nutrient status in our crops and so forth. Just like the gut microbiome has such an amazing impact on what nutrients get produced in our body so we function optimally. And so what's happened is over the years, overuse of pesticides and certain ones like glyphosate, et cetera, actually strips the soil of the healthy microbial species that keep everything in balance. And so we're at a point now, we're at a crossroads where, okay, look, we need to really look at regenerative practices that bring back healthy soil. A healthy soil equals healthy food. Healthy food equals healthy people. A healthy gut equals healthy people. And they are just so closely interrelated. If we're eating a bunch of foods that are grown in soil that is depleted of these really essential microbiome, uh, thing, bacteria, etc., it's stripping our own microflora. So the foods we eat, if we're eating GMO foods, etc., over time, that's also causing our own microbiome to become out of balance. So there's a lot more talk, I'm so happy to say, about what's happening with our soil and what we can do on a national scale to start to work with farmers to regenerate that soil. And there are ways to do that. And so, like I mentioned on July 15th, Secretary Rollins and Secretary Kennedy came together and hosted this roundtable with the farmers, right, with the agriculture experts. And that is so important. We need their input and we need their insight. And something Secretary Rollins said, she said, this is a crisis. 60% of children's calories are coming from ultra-processed foods. And she's encouraged that soil health is now a priority and looks forward to working on this with everyone, right? So replacing those ultra-processed foods with foods that are grown in nutrient-rich soil. It all starts with the raw materials, right? Like even like if you're cooking a meal, the quality of that meal is dependent on the quality of each one of those raw materials that you're using, the quality of the foods that you're using to prepare that meal, the quality of the herbs that you're adding, if they're fresh herbs, if they've been like dried herbs that have been sitting on a shelf for 5 years, right? If it's organic produce versus non-organic. Eggs that are coming from chickens that have been pasture raised versus stuck in cages makes a huge difference as far as what the outcome of that food is and the impact it has on us.
So,
And
so
so she's really behind this, and I'm so happy to see that. And Secretary Kennedy is extremely knowledgeable and has an intimate connection with the harm that chemicals are having on the soil. In fact, he said some of the chemicals that farmers use destroy the microbiome, and that causes the erosion of the soil. So he gets it. He gets that connection. And he also said we have farming practices now that are just, they're unsustainable. We need to give off-ramps to farmers so that they can transition to biodynamic agriculture and to regenerative outcomes. It's all about regenerative agriculture. And we really want to encourage that. And it's not like we're going to swing from one direction to the other, right? You can't go from having GMO crops to suddenly having this, overabundance of healthy soil and producing all organic produce. There's a bridge here. And we're kind of at the start of that bridge of how do we do this in a way that allows for sustainability across the board, sustainability of our soil long term and sustainability of the farmers and their practices. And how do we do that in a way that makes sense? And again, it's very doable and it looks like it's happening. And so I was very encouraged to learn about this roundtable discussion, and I know it's going to have a significant impact long term on the quality of our food, which translates to the quality and the health of humans.
So let me ask you that. Let's go back. Like, what kind of suggestions would you make? Like, I think we hear a lot in our political discourse these days with people making extreme suggestions one way or another. What would be three of your ideas that you think would help create like this partnership between government and big ag to ensure that people get healthy foods with
Well,
a healthy soil?
yeah, I mean, the first step is is communication. Like find out where it's at right now and find out what is realistic and doable for these farmers, right? In terms of using cover crops, reducing the use of chemicals like glyphosate and so forth that we now know are stripping the soil of essential just the microbiome in general. I was talking to a researcher, very well recognized and researcher, and he's actually out of Iowa. And we were talking about like the soil and GMO crops and all of this. And he, he's in support of farmers, and he is not anti-GMO or anything like that. He's living in Iowa, and he said, Dr. Gina, if you just walk a few feet away from my property and you'll see like there's tons of corn and soy being grown and it all looks beautiful, right? And then once that is harvested and you look at the soil, and this is just firsthand, he lives in Iowa, right? And he's a researcher and he understands nutrition intimately. And he said, there's nothing there. There's like no life there. No insects, no birds, no butterflies, literally. And this, again, I value this just as much as all the research that I have in front of me of all the double-blind placebo-controlled trials talking about the soil microbiome. I'm talking to somebody who's there in Iowa, right next to his property, and he's watching after the beautiful corn and the soy, and it all looks, perfect on the outside. He's looking at the soil after harvest, and it's literally the way he described it, he said it's just dead. It's not, there's nothing there. So look, you don't need to be a scientist to know we have a problem. That is not okay. And nature is amazing in its ability to regenerate. Just like I always say, the body is always working on your behalf to heal itself. It is always working to come back to a place of balance. And so don't underestimate the power of nature to find its way back. But we need to work with nature, meaning we need to remove some of those chemicals and start to be aware of what's going on and regenerate that soil. And I'm not an expert in regenerative agriculture. I am a huge proponent for it, but there are experts out there, some of which I know personally, and they are doing an amazing job at regenerating topsoil that was literally dead, right, within 5 years by implementing some really basic practices. I have a colleague who he started his regenerative agriculture farm by, going to Sprouts and taking all the reject food, right? They were going to be tossing because it was, produce that was not sellable anymore. And he started just growing, using that produce to grow food on this dead soil. And over time, within a 5-year period, he's been able to regenerate that topsoil to the point where it is thriving. And he has a thriving regenerative agriculture farm now. And he does things like animal rotation, where animals are rotated every 24 hours to different parts of the farm. So there are things out there, there are ways we know of. And so again, this is where just from a policy perspective, knowing that Washington is looking at this and taking in the input from farmers so that we can start to implement some of these common sense practices that over time will allow for everybody to thrive, for the farmers to thrive, for us to have food that doesn't just look pretty, but actually has the quality nutrition in it, right? So it's not just about the appearance, but what's really in these foods that's going to nourish our bodies. So
I
that
think
the saying, all that glitters is not gold, comes to mind here, right? So just because, if you look at a GMO apple, it looks perfect. It's beautiful. It's like, wow, why wouldn't I want to pick this over this organic apple, which may not look as pretty, but guess what? It is not as devoid of essential nutrients that the GMO food may be devoid of. I mean, just if you just look, like I said, at the soil once something is harvested, and if it looks dead, I'm guessing that the quality of that food is not what it could be.
And maybe you could tell this story. I think once upon a time in your career, you would supervise an organic farm in order to produce supplements. And what
Right.
did you see in that experience in terms of the quality of things you were able to produce as opposed to, a different type of method?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, for me, it's about outcome, right? And so when I'm creating a nutritional supplement, are patients getting better? Do they keep wanting to take that supplement? Are they healing by taking these food supplements? And what I saw was when I could look out my window in my office as director of research and development, and I could see this organic farm where these greens were being grown that I'm then putting in these formulas, these food supplements that patients are taking. I felt pretty good about using those raw materials versus having something shipped, from China that also, let's, for example, I don't know, wheatgrass, right? That said wheatgrass on the label, but it wasn't grown on a regenerative agriculture farm, right? And so the outcome wouldn't be the same. And so in terms of improvement of human health, I do see there's a direct correlation between the quality of the foods we eat, and that includes the quality of the raw materials that go into nutritional supplements that we take, and the outcome being, is this nourishing our body, helping our body to get back to a state of balance and health, or are we putting ourselves into a greater imbalance? Thinking we're doing something good for ourselves because we're taking a nutritional supplement, for example. I'm taking a green supplement. I should be feeling better. Why don't I feel better? Well, what is that green supplement? Where were those greens grown?
So, Doctor, if you could, we've got 30 seconds left in this segment. If you could engage with the audience regarding the phone numbers and the emails. Yeah. We love the emails.
Yeah, so if you do have a personal question and you're not comfortable asking it on air, do feel free to reach out to Dr. Gina, DRGINA, at bestdailyever